Has capitalism got you down? Have you been stuck inside, becoming increasingly angry and terrified about large, abstract issues over which you feel you have very little control? Have you sought out community by sharing your frustrations online, only to have ego-driven theory bros dishonestly quote tweet you and have the reply guys harass and belittle you? Well, strap in, because this video was made for you. This must sound rich coming from the person who gave you this entire channel of depressing political economic critiques of everything, but I have hit a wall. For many months now, I've just had a hard time listening to a lot of political content that is focused around critique or commiseration. I have not felt called to share my hot takes across godforsaken social media platforms like Twitter, which at this point is just completely counter-revolutionary. I actually just cannot go on there anymore. It is just a lot of people pumping themselves up and just blowing hot air in each other's faces and trying to just emasculate people of all genders. I've actually been binging the Babysitters Club, actually. Shout out Baby Nation, because I get it. I get it. I get how bad things are. I get how monstrous capitalism is, how disastrous imperialism, patriarchy, white supremacy, you name it, right? I know the leviathans that we're fighting, and I know that they are mutually reinforcing, and I don't know if it's COVID fatigue, but it's just, it starts to feel like all of the same, maybe a different context of exploitation or abuse, but the same general themes, the same general problems, and the same myopic debates or just drama across social media where the discourse is just, it's not good. Doing positive leftist news has been really great in that regard. It actually has its own channel now, so check that out if you're interested. But through doing that, I realized that there is a tremendous hunger for something else. I get so many comments from people who are just saying, I am not doing very well right now, and this is what I need, right? People hungry for the now what? Right? For the this is how we win, and watch us while we're doing it. Watch and feel how joyful it feels to watch people winning together, and how exciting it is when you see people who are really tapping into their radical creativity and innovatively coming up with pathways forward or solutions to issues that we hadn't even considered before, that we didn't think were possible before. And I really do believe in pleasure activism, in honoring our sacred yeses and our sacred no's, and moving towards those yeses, moving towards what excites us, moving towards a feeling of self-actualization in community, a feeling of having collective agency, and to make our movements alive and joyful and thrilling. As Adrienne Maree Brown says, our movements should be so irresistible that people cannot help but see us and see what we're offering and just need to be a part of it. And of course, many of our movements are going to still have to be oriented around reaction, reacting to all of the horrible, violent crap that, we're facing under these oppressive systems. There's really no getting around that. But I do think that we can and we should take a lot more joy in the pro-action. And as big as our problems are, I do see several pathways to victory, and I want to focus my energy on carving out those pathways in ways that feel truly hopeful and exciting and happy and invigorating. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to talk about a few ideas or things that are exciting me in the Living the Revolution section. I say that because apparently now our attention spans are so short that we need to put timestamps through all of our videos so that people can just skip ahead to, I guess the good parts. So I'll just say that everything I'm going to say in this video is going to be related and important to what I say next in the video. So you can just, maybe put it on 2x speed, sit back and stay with me. I think on the online left and even on the offline left too, sadly, there can be this real fetishization of the idea of revolution as a singular event, and that event is usually conceived of as a seizure event, a seizure of power. And if what you're doing is not immediately contributing to that seizure event, then you are a lib, you are an armchair socialist, you're a LARPer, whatever the hell else other insults that I don't have time for. But Papa Mark says,
"No social order ever perishes before all the productive forces for which there is room in it have developed, and new, higher relations of production never appear before the material conditions of their existence have matured in the womb of the old society itself. Therefore, humankind always sets itself only such tasks as it can solve, since, looking at the matter more closely, it will always be found that the task itself arises only when the material conditions of its solution already exist, or are at least in the process of formation."
I think most people on the left, regardless of your political tendency, understand the importance of building up dual power. And for anyone who doesn't understand that jargon, that basically just means building up parallel, communal, liberatory institutions outside of the current system. But there still tends to be this focus on this kind of imagined future one-day seizure event, and, less of an understanding that we actually need to get out and together live radically different social relations into being. Now, I'm going to flesh this out more, so stick with me, but I wanted to start with a little anecdote and kind of take you through some of my thinking on this, because I think it might be helpful or instructive for others who might feel like their ideology is limiting their creativity, I'll say that. So I started to maybe open up a bit and become more excited and enthused about the possibility of my own agency and prefiguration after my talk with Dr. Richard Wolff. And it was actually a knee-jerk reaction that I had had to something that Professor Wolff had said that actually humbled me and made me open up a little bit. So being a good Marxist political economist, I had obviously been supportive of the cooperative movement and excited about democratizing workplaces for a variety of reasons. But I would always often, revert back to the critic script, the good critic script. It's good stuff, but it's not good enough. It's not going to solve the contradictions of capitalism to have cooperatives competing against one another in a for-profit system. And therefore, I am writing this off. It is not the full answer. And if it is to be part of the answer, it will be so in a somewhat trivial way, And I think we definitely have a tendency of determining that if something is not the full answer to all of the contradictions of capitalism, or at least not the full answer in any way that we can immediately see or recognize, to just write it off as, not the answer, not the path, and maybe not even a critical part of it. But the thing that Professor Wolff said that made me recoil was that if we democratize our workplaces from the ground up, then it would be okay for cooperatives to engage in healthy competition with one another. And I thought, how in God's name could competition ever be healthy and not just lead to some co-ops outcompeting other co-ops and then just leading to the destitution of those workers in the ones that got outcompeted? So I still admittedly have a hard time with that, but it shows me that even I have not internalized my own videos about intellectual humility, because Professor Wolff is obviously a prolific economist who has been doing this far longer than I have. He has probably thought about this far more than I have. So I thought, okay, I don't fully buy this healthy competition thing, but let's not immediately revert to this kind of, well, I am the smartest critic because I can be more critical than you. Let's do a thought experiment. And I think that my kind of intellectually lazy knee-jerk reaction around the cooperative movement not being transformative enough, in part stems from the fact that I am steeped AF in capitalist realism. As someone who has only ever known this system and this vision of competition, or this vision of a hierarchical workplace and the kind of society that precipitates, it is very difficult, or, my capacity to imagine a pathway out of capitalism that goes through and then outside of capital is compromised. And although I don't personally see, or I'm not terribly invested in trying to build a future in which there is still competition, If transformation happens from the ground up, if we actually succeed in living radically new social relations into being from the ground up, then the character of interactions between cooperatives or workplaces has the potential to radically change. If we imagine that workers are in control of their workplaces in every workplace across every sector, it would no longer make sense for them to want to compete against one another. That wouldn't serve their interests as workers. It would make a lot more sense to collaborate, cooperate, and to divide up tasks to make sure that collectively we are solving the problems facing humanity and the planet as a whole. So potentially, in such a situation where the character of interaction between different firms and within different sectors has organically transformed due to a change in the material relations of production, in such a situation, we could conceivably have, if there was a major problem facing society, we could conceivably have, different cooperatives working on different models and trying to come up with the best one, and then having society, vote or determine which model was the best one, and then having relevant sectors go forward with that model. I'm not saying that this is what we should do or this is what will happen or whatever. The main point that I'm trying to make in bringing up this anecdote and this thought experiment is that in our actions to live new social relations of being into existence, we will not know, and we can't know fully, what sort of new system will emerge from those new social relations of production. And we don't really have to know now. So my point is that there are pathways to victory that are completely unknowable to us now because we are currently living in these late capitalist relations of production. And our material conditions, the material conditions that we are living within, very much shape our imaginations. They shape and they limit the ability for us to imagine different futures, right? So as we move forward and try to live new social relations of production and consumption into being, new pathways are going to emerge, and ultimately a new political economic system could emerge as these new relations materialize. And for anyone who knows their theory, I'm not saying anything new here. This is literally just prefigurative politics, but I want to make this video for a broader audience. I want to make this video for everyone who recognizes that there is something wrong. They understand the problems with capitalism, with the other systems of oppression that we are living under, but they are feeling stuck, or they're having a difficult time really imagining tangible pathways through and then outside of capitalism. So we shouldn't be so quick to write things off as not the path, right? We shouldn't be so quick to adopt what I consider to be a very patriarchal, chauvinist kind of posturing that leaps to intellectual closure and critique and mockery. Frankly, we are out here mocking each other, honestly, often just to feel like we are, the best, the smartest revolutionary in the room. I've said this before, but historical materialism is an analytical tool that is usually done in retrospective. You can look back at different stages of history and understand how history moved through different stages by looking at the material conditions. It is more difficult to make this predictive, but considering that each new stage of history arose due to changing material conditions of production and consumption, it follows that if we can live radically new social relations into being, then that will precipitate a change in the overall political economic system. But most importantly, a revolution that is lived into being is very difficult to overturn because it then becomes the system that is meeting people's needs. In the transition from feudalism to capitalism, there of course was a lot of violence enacted on peasants in order to force new material relations of production. But once people were living it, it was very, very difficult to overturn. That's why it's so difficult to imagine a world beyond capitalism, because we are living in these social relations now. And this is currently how our needs are being arguably not met, but you get what I'm saying, right? Capitalist infrastructure is currently what is meeting people's day-to-day needs. And so a disruption in that infrastructure or within this political economic system without having alternative communal ways of provisioning people's needs, in place would lead to chaos. And I think part of why it often feels so frustrating or overwhelming as leftists is because we're trying to, it's very difficult to try to design design or imagine a new society that we want to live in from the outside in, to come up with how we want everything to function, and then some point in the future seize power from the most powerful military the world has ever seen, and then force that vision into existence from the outside in. And again, that's largely a straw man. I know most people understand the importance of dual power, and I would hope that people in the Imperial Core know that we would be playing defense most of all. But then why does it still feel like there's just this kind of collective waiting, or this collective focus on this future seizure event that to me seems very unlikely in the Imperial Core, and not on this idea of living these relations into being? It's just a way more difficult way of understanding or going about this in the Imperial Core, because even then you're going to have to deal with inevitable counter-revolutions. There's going to be a constant struggle for power, and all of that can feel incredibly insurmountable and lead to a lot of inertia and doomerism. But we do actually have a lot of agency in living the revolution from the inside out, right? Through and out. We do have a lot of agency in being able to use the technology and the infrastructure and the productive forces of late-stage capitalism and come together and try to find innovative ways to make the state and capital as irrelevant to the functioning of our communities as possible. You know, there's a cliched saying when dealing with trauma that the only way out is through. And following Gabor Mate, I really do believe that patriarchy, white supremacy, and capitalism are not only traumatic systems that cause collective trauma, they are also themselves maintained and reproduced through intergenerational trauma. And I think that even in leftist spaces, I mean, we don't often acknowledge our own trauma because we haven't really introspected that much, and we tend to externalize a lot of our trauma on other people within these spaces. We cling to our fragile egos, we cling to systems of power that give us a modicum of sense of, power or identity as trauma responses. I don't want to go too far down this trauma path, but the point here is that if we want to transform these oppressive and deeply traumatic systems, the only way out is through. We need to live it. And frankly, to get bleak for a second, this is a Mexie video, the climate crisis is advancing at such a rate that we are in trouble. Global warming of 3.2 degrees Celsius is likely by 2090 and possible by 2070. Automation is set to make millions of people superfluous to capital, not even workers anymore. Pandemics are slated to increase as temperatures warm, and COVID really showed us how ill-prepared capitalism is to deal with any kind of social or environmental crisis. I talked in my COVID and animals video about how stores were empty of meat, meanwhile millions of animals were being needlessly slaughtered and just tossed out onto compost heaps. At some point, capital will cease to be able to meet the needs of people, and especially people in crisis, because it will just not be profitable to do so. And so major global commodity chains will start to break down. So is this channel going to become a communal prepping channel? Maybe. No, it won't. But I have been deriving a lot of enthusiastic yeses when listening to people like communal preppers, or listening to people who are just talking about really innovative, communal-focused ways of using technology to solve problems in the here and now. People talking about reciprocity and how to meet each other's needs and the needs of the non-humans and our environments around us in a way that can foster a real sharing economy. And when people think about this kind of community building, it's usually like, oh, that's a privileged thing. You need to just move out of the city. You need to own land and start a homestead or something. But there's actually a lot of things that we can do in the inner city. And of course, it's not about just isolating your community and just living off the grid in this really individualist way. We obviously still have to fight the state. We still have to fight imperialism. We still need to decolonize and transfer governing authority to the indigenous nations that we inhabit and honor the treaties. But we can start to move forward and build community resiliency and start to build up a new grid of resilient communities who are committed to decolonization and reciprocity, and that can be there there and step in and step up when the capitalist grid inevitably leaves us all out to die. And the things that we can all start doing, or that we maybe are already doing, are not only achievable, but they are also not illegal. Everyone wants to jump to like, oh, but the state's gonna crush you. What about the freaking guns? And, you know, yes, community defense is absolutely part of this, but it's not the most exciting part. It's definitely not even the most important part at the moment, considering we don't have much of anything built up that is worthy of defense. We should probably start there. And for now, at least, a lot of the things that we can do to try to live new social relations into being, to try to make the state and capital as irrelevant as possible, are all perfectly legal. So what are some of those things? I have been inspired by all revolutionaries that came before me that were particularly good with building dual power or alternative institutions like the Black Panther Party. More recently, I have been inspired by Peter Joseph, actually. He's the zeitgeist guy, and if he's problematic, let me know. I'm sorry, I don't have the spoons. But he appeared recently on a Media Roots episode, and the way that he was talking about things, it just got me enthused. Also, my interview with Haya Heller and Mason Herson-Hord from the Institute of Social Ecology was really inspiring to me. Near the end, Mason was talking about all the ways that his community is organizing, which was just fantastic. And I've also been inspired by the Black Socialists of America, who are developing a novel dual power app. Please go check this project out on their website and consider donating. I think this is fantastic, and it's exactly the kind of ingenuity that we need. But as Peter Joseph talks about, we obviously need to build new systems that do not rely on capitalist infrastructure. And there are already a lot of ways that communities are coming together and trying to meet each other's needs using as little money as possible. So making community life and participation in community and, you know, I guess having your needs met be as accessible to everyone as possible, whatever their income. Firstly, obviously, we can be sharing resources, and this is already happening, you know, creating kinds of libraries, shout out library socialism, but, you know, tool libraries, appliance libraries, vehicle sharing, etc., so that not everybody needs a thing if they aren't using it all of the time. That not only reduces the material throughput and puts less pressure on the environment, but also increases access for everyone. Communities like Masons are implementing time banking systems where people can put in time to help the community and have that time serve as a kind of currency, not money. And of course, making sure that no one's time is worth any more than anyone else's time, and that there are a lot of varied ways in which people can help the community so that the system is not ableist, hopefully. But this is literally from each according to their ability to each according to their need. Mason's community has also instituted a system of direct democracy and has connected with other communities in the area, forming a people's assembly and forming a network of self-governing communities, you know, literally building out this new grid. Communities are developing very innovative community and guerrilla gardening strategies, including creating communal food forests, even in urban areas, and then cooking and sharing food. This takes resources, but some communities are pooling their resources and purchasing 3D printers and setting up like 3D printer libraries, developing small and localized renewable energy, even alternative affordable housing. I should say that in some cities like Toronto, some of these actions are absurdly illegal, so we do need to keep fighting them on this, using mesh networks for cell phones and getting off the grid as much as possible. Wherever possible, people can set up cooperatives, and through this, people can practice democratically controlling their own workplaces, which is not something that you just wake up knowing how to do, especially if you've been living in late capitalism for so long. This is something you need to practice and actually live into being. On a broader level, it would obviously be better to have as many workplaces be worker-run as possible, given the thought experiment that I did before. But wherever you're working, you can start making connections, you can start building out your network of comrades so that we can start to make use of existing infrastructure to meet people's needs even when supply chains fail. So to be ready to seize supply chains entirely and operate them democratically, but also building out our grid outside of that. Communities are even organizing alternative schools, unlearning schools on a local level. And Peter Joseph talks about the fact that in the future, it would be really beneficial to have universities or places of learning learning, obviously be free, but to have those be the hubs of, innovation or technology development, not private firms, so that, obviously all of these, knowledge producers and holders can be sharing information freely to solve the problems that we're facing. And no, none of this is going to be a cakewalk. And yes, of course, there's still going to be struggles for power between workers and capitalists, but setting yourself tangible and achievable steps to improve not only your lives, but the lives of your comrades in community, that is exciting. And it repositions you, it repositions all of us as active agents in shaping our post-capitalist future. And yeah, it takes time and not everybody has time, but my phone gives me a report every week about how many hours I am wasting getting pissed off about other people's nuclear takes.
Nuclear. It's pronounced nuclear.
And so I could probably be a little bit more present and intentional about some of that. And as AFCO aptly says,
the problem with many intersectional activists today is they get so caught up in these systems and fighting that they don't spend time grappling with why they're fighting. Many fight without having any clue as to what they want the world to look like one day. When we don't have a map for what we want our future to look like, we're fighting only because it makes us feel we have an identity.
So I'm actually really excited because my partner and I have been planning for a while to move out of the city. I have been here for far too long, doing my PhD and everything. And don't get me wrong, I love it. Love, hate, whatever. But I'm not from the city. Frankly, I belong in the woods. And it is far too expensive to live here, and I have been working far too many jobs with devastating chronic illness for far too long. I cannot do it anymore. So I'm very excited that we are going to leave and hopefully find somewhere greener and a bit cheaper to hopefully work less and organize more. Develop community gardens, develop time banking systems, affect local politics, develop resource sharing centers, and learn practical skills that we can share with the community. And to me, this sounds joyful. Yes, capitalism is destroying me and my body, and the world is crashing down around me, but I do have some degree of agency in shaping the kind of future that I want, shaping the kind of community that I want to be a part of, and doing it in a way that can help younger generations pick up the mantle and run even further with it. I think we often don't think generationally either in the West. We think that we need to solve everything now with our one answer, but I really think that our task is really to just move things forward as much as we can, live new social relations into being as much as we possibly can, so that younger generations can take that and run with it. And they will be in a better position to run further with it because they will hopefully be being raised in more progressive, social relations of being than we were, and that will affect their imagination and what they're able to dream up and what they're able to do and accomplish together in the future. So spend time picturing how you would want to live if the state and capital were not a thing. How would you want to be living? What would your community life look like? Think about that and dwell in that place of possibility and get excited about it. And then move where that excitement takes you to try to just, start sowing even the smallest seeds of change in your life. That sounds so ridiculous and cliched, but to me, that's so much more exciting than doom scrolling. If revolution is this event where we just storm the Capitol and seize everything, then yeah, it can be said that a lot of what people are doing, especially online, is not working towards that end. But if revolution is the process through which we live new social relations into being, then a lot of what people are doing can be recast as actually being relevant to the revolution. Now, I do think that on LeftTube, we're doing a lot of navel-gazy entertainment and drama stuff, and I do think that there is a worrying amount of fetishizing and rewarding things like machismo, ego, and just otherwise not breaking down patriarchal modes of engaging with one another, which I think is, firmly holding on to the status quo. It's also incredibly white. It's not really surprising to me that the kinds of hierarchies that we see developing within, the leftist online entertainment sphere very much map on to the same kind of hierarchies of power that we see outside that we're actually trying to dismantle. So living the revolution does include doing that work to root out the internalized drives that we have to replicate systems of power that we actually want to dismantle. But in the process of living the revolution, education, agitation, and even entertainment can be part of creating the class consciousness that helps other people to live differently. You know, fighting to give Indigenous people their land back, that is living the revolution. Dismantling whiteness in all of our spaces, which is not happening online, that is living the revolution. You know, trying to actively live in reciprocity with our environments around us, that's living the revolution, right? Feeding people, tenant organizing, defunding the police, starting a cooperative, right? I'm not trying to recast revolution as just being like anything at all, like tying your shoe, that's living the revolution. No, but we spend so much time disparaging each other, and worse, we actively limit each other's creativity through online bullying. And I want to empower you today to stop that. I want you to move towards what excites you, move towards what you think would be a tangible thing that you could do to start living your communal future into being in any way that's accessible to you. Think about the changes that you could make that you would be excited to pass down to the next generation and watch them run with. You are not powerless. You're not alone. You don't need to compare yourself with others, and you do not need to prove yourself to anyone. So that's all I have for now. I will update you if I come across any other cool ideas. I will definitely still be doing depressing political economic critiques on this channel. I actually had the idea of wanting to look at the geopolitics of lithium and renewable energy at some point soon. And I still will be out in the streets protesting everything bad that's happening from a reactive position. But outside of that, I'm going to be focusing all of my energy on presence and intentional prefiguration, and I'm going to be getting fucking excited about it. Thank you to Ash from the Horror Vanguard for the brilliant opening skit, and thank you to Sadlord777 and Professor Flowers for the wonderful voice acting. Please check out and subscribe to all of their projects. Links are in the description box below. Thank you to Tristan for editing this video, and thank you to my patrons who make this work possible. If you'd like to support the continuation of these videos, please head over to patreon.com/Mexie or toss me a one-time tip via PayPal below. Thank you also to the amazing people who have sent me PayPal donations. I appreciate you so much.